Greetings everybody, Rhadamant here. Thank you for tuning in to a brand new series of Endzone, A World Apart, playing the most recent DLC, Distant Places, which originally streamed live on Twitch. More information about the game and the series can be found in the description of this video. So, before I start, I should just let you all know what this game is and what to expect. Endzone is a post-apocalyptic survival city builder where you start a new civilization with a group of people after a global nuclear disaster. We're going to be building a new home and ensuring their survival in a shattered world threatened by constant radiation, toxic rain, sandstorms, drought, dehydration, starvation, and raiders. I'll be playing slow and methodical, explaining the game mechanics as I go on. I'm not amazing at this game, so I'm only going to be playing on normal difficulty because I do find it quite difficult. It should be pretty similar to Surviving the Aftermath, which is a game that was on the channel somewhat recently, and I, of course, will be incorporating as much feedback from all of you as possible. I am playing with all 3 DLCs, so that is Prosperity, Halloween, and Distant Places. Distant Places is the most recent. It gives you ways to interact with sort of the exploration mechanics. And I should also mention that this is a sponsored stream, but that's already in the title, so you probably knew that. So let's get started. When you play a new game, there is a tutorial. The tutorial is a very long tutorial, and it teaches how to play the game pretty well. One thing I will say about the tutorial, though, is that, and maybe I should lower the volume just a little bit. The tutorial offers you a lot of free resources, so it's not a clear indicator of how difficult survival mode is. Just to let you know that. So I'll be playing on normal difficulty, which is well balanced in neutral settings. There is advanced and maximum challenge. Oh my god, I tried maximum challenge. Did I ever get smoked? I lived like maybe a few seasons. For the map settings. Whoa, this is an interesting seed. It is surrounded by mountains, which is probably terrible to sprawl. I'm going to play on default map settings, but I'm probably going to re-roll that one, because I'll be pinned in pretty tightly. So what you're looking for, wow, another, like, completely surrounded by mountains. What you're looking for is to start close to a body of water and have room to sprawl. So that is indeed what this is. The free area around starting point, if you really want a lot of space, you could do large, and that will give you a lot of starting area, but this is fine. Wow. I'm going to call this Yodaville, because, you know, it's always named after him. And we'll start the game. And welcome, welcome. Hey, buddy. So we start off with a little bus loaded with resources.
You know what we learned in the Endzone. Basic needs come first and foremost. We have to build up a water and food supply, and then
build ourselves a new home. So right at the start, you should probably pause. Because unpaused means that you're going to be running out of food and water and shelter. First things to do is to try to find where the resources are. So this bus started very close to this body of water. That was a little bit by design because I re-rolled. To go over the inventory, or rather the UI really quickly. Up top you have your water, food, wood, scrap, tools, radiation protection, medication, or medicine, cloth, metal, plastic, electronics, and coal. Eventually, you will unlock more advanced technologies and resources. That is a lot of community gifted subs. I have no idea who you were, but thank you. I will turn pink for that, absolutely, and give you the free Yoda cam as I explained. Up here, we also have population growth, whether it's declining, constant, or growing. One of the fastest ways to fail in this game is to grow your population too quickly and then not be able to support that population with clothing, tools, and food and water. So you have to measure that and balance that carefully, and I'll explain this more in details later. You have your adults and your children, and then if you mouse over the children, you can see how close they are to age up to become adults. So Jessica, for instance, is going to age up soon, whereas Naomi, not so soon. Here you have how happy people are, and there are advantages and brackets that you get when they're too happy or too sad. So when they're too sad, the reproduction rate drops and productivity drops, research drops, you get rebellions and people move slowly. And when you're really happy, they live longer, they have more children, they're more efficient, so on and so forth. So there's a huge incentive to keep them happy. Here we have the average radiation of all settlers. Now settlers, there's three types of clothing that they can wear: neck scarves, masks, and full body suits. And depending on the level of radiation that is in your colony, they will need different levels of protection. And then you have the average health of all your settlers. And then here is knowledge, which is used to research things in the research tree, and how many different varieties of food that they have. The larger varieties of food, generally speaking, the healthier they are. So it staves off diseases. Down here, we have some statistics about the colony. I really honestly never use this menu. We have resources. What's in stock, you can also just search. So if I want to go, hey, how many bell peppers do I have? Well, 0. Then here, production limits. To limit the amount of production that you have. So for instance, if you're trying to make tools out of metal, it helps to have a production max so that you don't make way more tools than you need, therefore you free up the metal to be used for other things. So here's the production max by default, but you can always change it if you'd like. Next, and this one is very important, professions. This is how people are employed. This is very similar to Banished, if you've played Banished. But right at the start, I'm obviously going to want to put settlers into builders. Settlers, what they do is they transport resources to depots and they do general tasks. So I'll show you that in a minute. But yeah, professionals or the employment screen, very, very, very important. You'll be tinkering with this constantly. And then buildings and tasks. And then down here, we have weather data. I don't have a weather station, so I don't really get to know all the information, but you can see whether it's going to rain or not rain. When you have a weather station, it can show you how much radiation is going to be in the rain and give you some other predictions and abilities to micromanage your water resources. Then there's a few overlays. So this is the terrestrial radiation overlay. Green is low, yellow is medium, and red, which shouldn't be on the map anywhere, is high. No radiation means you don't need protective clothing traveling through that area. And if you are wearing protective clothing traveling through that area, it doesn't wear out. And then if I, for instance, went with just a neck scarf into a medium area, I could become irradiated, and that would not be good. The game does ramp up to become more and more radiated over time, so that is something that is constantly challenging. Then we have soil moisture. The soil moisture changes in this game rather constantly, so you shouldn't really plan your farms based upon the current moisture, because as it rains or as it dries out, it will change all the time. But you do have that overlay. There is an irrigation point that you can add in to your farms to irrigate certain areas, and we'll be doing that, of course. Then we have house attractiveness. Houses don't like to be close to production facilities, and it will lose attractiveness and they'll become unhappy if they're near industry. Electricity, that I can't really show you because I don't have any electricity yet. And then building condition, depending on how damaged, destroyed, or slightly damaged the buildings are. So let's get started with all that information. One of the things that you might want to try to avoid to do at the start of the game is to build in radiation, because it means that your builders will have to clean up the radiation before they build, and then also they'll become somewhat irradiated doing the building. So the first thing to do probably is to set some of your settlers up to builders, and then to set up some settler tasks, because the settlers will idle and do nothing unless you tell them something to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell the settlers to gather wood in this area, and also gather scrap in this area. The idea is I'd like to, and if we turn off this overlay, I'd like to free up this area down here for farming. So clearing the trees and clearing the scrap is probably really wise. I have 600 food and 600 water, and we go through water a lot faster than we go through food. So the first order of business is to set up a jetty into the lake here so that we can exploit the water that is in the pond. Now, if you're wondering, yes, that water down there can be irradiated, so there is a danger to that, which can be mitigated later on. And then just being able to hold the water, you need somewhere to store it. So I'm also going to build a cistern. A cistern will hold the water for us in storage so that if we have droughts, we can draw from it. It's also really important for your cistern to be somewhat close to both the jetty and also where people like to live. Because one thing that I failed the first time I played this game that I didn't really understand is proximity efficiencies. So what I mean by that is each individual in your colony has to like commute to and from work. They have to get food, they have to get water. And if you lay your if you lay out your town inefficiently so that an individual worker has to travel a long time, they will be very unable to be productive. So it's really important, at least initially, when you're starting out, that everything is sort of plopped onto one another and compact, or you will die. You will fail and you will die, because the people that work at those workplaces, like your lumberjacks and your farmers, won't be able to do a lot of work because they will be constantly traveling from point A to point B. So it's really important that you lay out efficiently early on and not aesthetically. That's the key. I was trying to play this game and I was failing really hard because I kept trying to lay everything out nice and aesthetically. And the game's like, ha, aesthetics, huh? And I would like starve to death. It was really brutal. So the other thing I'm going to do is this jetty. I'm going to click this button here, which is to build next. Basically, it is the highest priority. I'm going to get the jetty and then the cistern. Now, let me unpause. And you can see each individual person here. These settlers are going out to go cut trees down and collect scrap. And then the builders are running over to deliver, to clear the areas of trees for the jetty and to deliver wood. And for the cistern, to clear the area of trees, deliver wood, and deliver scrap. If I was building in an irradiated area, it would look like this, where we have to then clear all the radiation first, which adds a remarkable amount of initial work. Now, later on, pretty much every building that you place, you will have to remove the radiation first, because really, later on, everything becomes somewhat irradiated, and it's very common that you have to remove the radiation, but really early game, you just don't have the manpower to remove a lot of radiation, so don't. Plus, traveling through an area that is heavily irradiated will wear out your protective clothing. And right now, we only have 15 masks and 15 tools. And Soulblader and Destroy with Roy, thank you for the resubs. So some of the next things that we're going to add once the jetty and the cistern are built will be probably fishing, because that's a really easy early game way to feed ourselves. And I could put the fishing hut right here. So I can actually lay this down and click this button to say pause, so that we don't spend any time building the fishing hut until the jetty and the cistern are done. Other really, really efficient ways to feed yourself really early on is farming, provided that you don't have initial droughts. So I will say, sometimes when you start a new game, the next season you're going into will have a drought and like just start over because you're gonna die. Like, you might eke out a survival with like 2 people left or something, but it's not worth it unless you're a masochist. So, beware. All right, so this jetty has 10 of the 16 wood needed to build. And you can see all these little people walking around collecting scrap and wood and delivering it. So there's the jetty. It is built. And then I'm going to say cistern build next. So all the jetty does is the people that are set as water haulers will walk to the end of the jetty and then walk back to the cistern. It's also important to note that a jetty can support like roughly 3 water haulers or so. So if you want to increase the amount of water that you can haul to your cisterns, you're going to need more jetties. And with that information, I might not want to set up my my fishery there. I might want to set another jetty up in this spot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause this jetty so that I don't take the room. and try to find a place for fishing elsewhere, because there's really... Okay, there we go. I can put fishing hut there instead. There's also a pretty high incentive to group your food production facilities together, because if you're trying to decontaminate the food of radiation, it helps that your food producers are all grouped. I don't think I'm going to be able to group my farms next to this fishing hut. No, actually, I might be able to farm out there. But yeah, that's another thing to think about. So here we go. The cistern is now built, and I'm going to employ 3 water haulers. So if I go to the professions screen, 3 of the settlers that I had just became water carriers, and you're going to see them move from the jetty to the cistern, filling the cistern up. The cistern can hold up to 2,000 water, but as you upgrade the building, which I don't have the resources to do that now, as you upgrade the building, it will be able to store more water, and it can also filter the water to filter the radiation out of it. So now that I have the cistern, it is time to get the fishing hut. And then also I think it would be wise to lay out some initial homes. So I'm going to probably put the homes as close to this cistern as possible. People have to commute to their own jobs. So the closer you have homes to their workplaces, the shorter their commute will be and the more efficient they will be as a result. Also, a cistern has water for them to drink from, so that means that anytime that they're thirsty, they don't have to travel very far. It does mean that I have to be careful about where I put unattractive facilities, but there's ways to counteract unattractive facilities. So if I, for instance, had a lot of industry right next to my houses, I could just put a lot of decorations like shrubs, hedges, street lamps next to the houses to offset the ugliness. And as you can see, the fishing hut here is not next to or not inside of the radiation yet, so that's also really good. I'm not fighting the radiation, constructing it there. And I will build a road in that spot. So these little dirt roads will slightly speed up the travel time of the people that use those roads. And I'm actually going to bring this over there too. Eventually you get paved roads, which are even a greater improvement, but we're not going to be there for quite some time. And Digital Uno, thank you for the sub. Welcome to the stream. So the next step after I get the fishing hut constructed, and that should happen pretty fast, is to start laying up homes. If we want to have the next generation even exist, they're going to need houses. So that brings me to one of the game mechanics here about growing population. There are 2 types of homes. There are homes that offer privacy and therefore inhabitants that can have children. And then there's group shelters where no one has children inside the group shelters. And you want to actually balance the 2. In a lot of games, you're sort of incentivized to push towards everyone having their own home. But in this game, that's like honestly suicide. I'm not kidding. It is suicidal to do that. Because what you'll end up doing is having a growth boom to the point where like you can't keep up with it unless you're a super veteran player, which I am not. And if you're new to the game, you are not. So don't do that. So what you're going to want to do is to build roughly like, I don't know, 6 to 8 houses at the start. And then as you start to get cloth, because these shelters here require cloth, and I don't have cloth right now, as you start to get cloth, you will build some additional shelters instead of homes. You can also tell the shelters to house only the infertile and the old to encourage population growth. So there's ways to sort of tweak it so that people that can have kids are prioritized for cabins, and then people that can't have kids are prioritized for shelters. All right, so here's our fishing hut. This fishing hut is affected by both radiation and drought. So if the pond that I'm on dries up, the fishermen will not have fish to catch. All right, so cabin time. I am going to put my cabins here, I think. So there is 6 cabins, which should be enough for the start. They're very close to the fishing hut, very close to the cistern. And if I farm up in this spot, they'll be close to the farms as well. I actually like this spot for farming, despite the fact that there's some radiation there. I can work with the radiation. So what the game is telling me now is that there's no one around to collect scrap anymore. or to collect wood, because I've employed every settler that I had. So I'm going to remove a few builders from building to become settlers to collect scrap and wood, so I don't run out as I build. I'm also going to move the collect wood zone to right where the houses are, so I can start clearing the trees there. And I'm going to do the same thing with the scrap to start to clear this scrap. Some of the scrap here can only be cleared through a scrapyard, but a lot of the smaller stuff can be cleared just by settlers by hand. It does, well, actually, no, I'm going to undo that scrap change. I'm undoing that because this zone is somewhat irradiated. It's actually not that irradiated. I take that back. If I set the scrap collect to here, they're going to only briefly travel through radiation to get there, which isn't so bad. Yeah, that seems fine. So here we go. Building cabins for people. And as I add cabins, you should see that my population will go up. So right now I went from declining to constant, and as I add more cabins, it will be growing. I can call you Digi, or Digital. Well, all right, Digi. Didgeridoo. All right, next order of business is to diversify our food, I think. So there's a few other different buildings, and this should harken back to Banished a bit, where you have gatherers and hunters. Gatherers like to gather from forests that are old. Yeah, that's about as simple as that is. So ideally, you don't want the gatherers to be working where foresters are, where foresters cut down trees and replace them. Old forests have berries and herbs to collect for medicine. Young forests don't. So I'm going to put one gatherer there and a hunter in that same location. And we'll get those set up so that I can collect berries and meat. And you can see that there's some boar here that I can shoot and kill or capture. Eventually, I'm going to have you all polled about some of the things that our colony can do. But at the start, we really need to absolutely maximize survival because it is so easy to fail in the first, 20 minutes. And that would be really embarrassing for me. So I'm going to try to avoid that. So this hunting lodge and gathering cabin is not too far from these cabins, so that the commute shouldn't be too bad. And then I can set up their area that they work, keeping in mind that the further that they work from their facility, the longer travel time that they have. And then the hunting lodge, same deal. We can change where they shoot to focus on where there's actually animals. And animals sort of wander around. The animals in the game, as far as I could tell, aren't affected by housing or industry or anything like that. They just wander around randomly and you can shoot them. So we have our fishing going. We've got the water haulers going. So you can see these are the water haulers hauling in water from the jetty to the cistern. And if you click the facility, we can actually see how they're walking. So this guy is like, you know what? I don't want to use the path. They don't always use the path. And you can actually calculate their desired path. So looking at his weird path, some of the weird path is just the fact that I actually haven't constructed the dirt roads here. So they're not built and therefore not efficient. But if I do see that they keep walking to the back edge of the cistern, I could always create a dirt road here to speed them up. And because of the houses I just built, I now have a higher rate of reproduction and newborn settlers will live slightly longer. Nice. And Digi, thank you for gifting out a community sub. And yes, Jessica just graduated from a child to adulthood, and Alvaro will be next. And hopefully we'll have some kids soon. So I'm going to say Gathering Cabin is going to be the next priority. Another thing to note is that during extreme droughts, or any droughts, the Gathering Cabin won't work either. The Hunting Lodge will. So you can hunt whether there's drought or not. You cannot gather in drought. And I will probably have some homelessness here soon. So William and Scarlett are taking care of Alvaro and Victoria. And as these children age up, they're going to want houses of their own. So it did say that the ideal is roughly like 8 houses, and that's just to account for a little bit of expansion. Alright, and there's my gathering cabin. So I'm going to hire 1 gatherer. And I could do this either through this overlay here, or through the work over here. So as you can see, I can right now hire someone to be a hunter, but the hunting lodge isn't actually built, so it wouldn't make any sense until it is. And they do grow up fast, yeah. Although it's been a whole season since I started the game. So it's been 3 months. I'm not really sure how seasons work. Like, the time. They're just seasons. Something to note, if we look at the charts here for, let's say, storage, and check, I don't know, beverages, you can see that my water is going up, but my, other beverages are going down. It's a good way to sort of track if you're gaining or losing over time. So I did start with 600 of water and food, and my food is dropping, but I am now employing a hunter and a gatherer, which should offset my food loss. Now, the next thing that I wanted to do, and I'm going to look at the radiation overlay. So here, as you can see, the radiation is constantly changing. So the radiation that I had in here, the medium irradiation, has changed. What I'm guessing right now is that the rain that is currently occurring is not irradiated, so it's actually helping to wash some of the radiation away. Because I would like to, if possible, set up farming pretty early on, because farming is a really powerful way to keep you fed. And laying out your farms to take full advantage of the irrigation is going to be ideal. So farms have a maximum size of 16 by 16. Let's see. I'm going to... Maybe I'll farm like right up against my... No, I'll give a little space. So 16 by 12. And we will set up our first cultivated field. And then I am also going to set up an orchard right in this location of 8 by 16. So orchards require less work, but they don't immediately yield fruit or whatever from the work facilities, because of course the trees have to mature. Another thing to note is that you start off with random seeds, and not all food is identical. Some seeds are better than others. So I don't know what seeds I have yet. I have to clear the farm fields, but yeah, you should take a look at like how long it takes for the food to grow, for how long the seasons are, and then what the yields are. With that said, the greater amount of fruit variety that you have, the healthier your people will be. So even if a food is inefficient, it might be in your best interest to grow it anyway. So my hunters have deer and boar to hunt. My gatherers are collecting berries. And soon we'll have an orchard and a farm. Stig, thank you for the follow. Are you a race car driver? Or just a fan of Top Gear? So then once I have a little bit of farming, the next resource that I would like to address is wood and scrap. It is not very efficient to have my settlers gather wood and scrap by hand, so we're going to have a forester and a scrapyard. Also, I haven't really looked around for points of interest yet either. It looks like I got a little screwed with not a lot of points of interest next to where I started. So points of interest would be like this building here, which is an interesting location which we can set up an expedition to. Sometimes when you play, you'll start like next to a metropolis where there's a lot of stuff happening and a lot of points of interest. And then sometimes on my seed here, I start off with basically no points of interest anywhere near my start, which is fine. But the points of interest can offer you additional seeds, research, resources. They're really lucrative to travel to. Hey, Godfather. You kind of miss old Top Gear? Don't we all, man? Prime peak Top Gear was amazing. Grand Tour, I liked, but it didn't scratch that Top Gear itch. All right, let's clear the field first. So I'm going to prioritize it with this button again. And that means that the builders will try to clear that field. Also, another child just aged up, so I'm going to make them a builder because I'm trying to get that field up and going ASAP. As far as logistics go, let's add in some roads where the farm fields are. The dots means that you just haven't built it yet. But here, as you can see, now that this dirt road has been built, my water haulers are using the roads instead of walking along the backside, which means that, they're taking the path of least resistance, and I don't need to min-max that any further. Alright, I have no free cabins, so that's another thing I might want to build relatively soon, and we're about to clear this field. There's only one more tree to clear. Done. So now that we've cleared the field, I have access to zucchini and cabbage. Zucchini takes 2.5 seasons for a maximum yield of 960 for a field this size, and cabbage takes 1.9 seasons for a maximum of 768. I'm going to plant cabbage. The longer they grow, the more affected it can be by droughts. So if it takes a long time to grow, it is not a drought-resilient crop. So shorter grow periods are better. And we are about to clear the orchard now. I think it's... Nope, not that one. I don't know what builder's clearing the orchard, but hopefully it gets done in just a sec. It goes, and I have apple trees. So I'll employ 2 farmers now. And the apples, if we take a look at the seeds, growing time is 4 seasons. It takes for a single plant to reach full yield once it has been newly seeded. And it has 8 crop cycles until it needs to be tilled again. So basically, it's 4 full seasons until the apple trees actually give me any apples. But then we can harvest it for 8 cycles in a row. And then regrow everything again in 1 season. So it's a powerful long-term investment, but it won't give me any food in the upfront. But hopefully it pays off in the long run. So there we go. Our 2 fields, cultivated field and orchard. And now I'm going to update the priority. Oh, and a pet Yoda. Hi, buddy.
Oh, yes.
Secure resources. So by that I mean scrap and wood. Those are the 2 primary resources that the really early game. Before I even do that, I'm going to add a few more cabins in so I don't have any homelessness. So for a scrapyard collects scrap, and you can turn that scrap into cloth, metal, plastic, and electronics. These scrapyards, if I take a look at the home attractiveness, as you can see, if I put it close to the home, it makes the homes unattractive. So it's best to have your scrapyard physically far enough away from your homes that the homes don't suffer. I think what I'll do is I'll try to put my scrapyard out here. What I want to do is I want to, or maybe over here, I want to have it close enough so that it is not a long commute to my storage and not a long commute to the food or other resources. So yeah, I'll put a scrapyard there. As I said earlier, bunching everything up on top of one another in the early game is really powerful so that people don't have long commutes and you stay more productive and you stay alive. So there's this scrapyard. So all the scrapyard will do is collect random scrap. And I'm going to start collecting scrap from over here. It's a slightly further commute for the scrapyard than getting the scrap that it's immediately adjacent to, but it will help to start clearing out farmland for me. Cheers, Mike. The current weather is slightly irradiated rain. So if we take a look at the radiation overlay, it's actually not really irradiating me right now, but it is watering everything. So here's the water overlay, and as you can see, it is constantly shifting. Which is why trying to lay out your farms where it is hydrated doesn't really work, because rain will change the soil moisture all the time. And we had another child age up, and Eric and Naomi are about to age up as well, so I'm going to have more builders, and I'm going to employ more of my settlers into builders so that we can get that scrapyard built. Now, the first things you want to do, generally speaking, once you have a scrapyard built, is to then refine the scrap into cloth and metal so that you can make clothing and you can make tools. Because without clothing, people get sick from the radiation. Without tools, they work very inefficiently. So tools and clothing are very necessary to have early game. And then afterwards, you can start working towards loftier goals like plastics to be able to improve your cistern to become a water tower, things like that. Another thing we're also going to need besides scrap and wood is coal. Coal's used to make activated charcoal masks or to filter water in your water towers and a whole bunch of other things. So we're also going to need a charcoal kiln going. But that's probably after I have a little bit of population growth, because I just won't have enough people to be employed in all of these facilities. Another thing to note is that the cistern's water tank max level is 2,000. So when I hit about 1,900 or so, I can remove a water hauler from the cistern, from being a water carrier, and employ them elsewhere. So I'm keeping a close eye on my water. But my food and my water is above starting values, which means I'm in the positive, which is really good. Another thing that would be good, as soon as I get the scrapyard built, is to upgrade the bus wreck, which is the starting town center, I guess, to a mounted bus. The mounted bus acts as a campfire, which means it can improve the confidence that people have in the colony. It's a really easy way to get an initial confidence boost to make people happier. Oh, and my scrapyard is done, so let's start collecting scrap. I'm going to employ 2 scrap haulers because the commute here is a little bit further than it would be normally. Just because I'm trying to clear out an area. I have some cisterns. Can they be upgraded to bro turns? No, they can't. Oh, and there we go. We're building the roads, which will help to improve the efficiency of the scrapyard as well. So if we take a look at these scrappers, you can see the path that they take, which is the dotted yellow to their work area. Right now, there is really no discernible radiation in the colony, which is really good. That will help my clothing last longer. And then my soil moisture levels are really, really high, which is good for the yield of the fields. So as you can see, the farmer here is sowing the cabbage, and there's no impediment. Down here in the weather, I do have a drought coming in about 4 seasons. So building up a supply of food and water for those droughts are going to be really important. Eventually, there is more natural disasters that hit harder than droughts, because there's a lot of technology that can offset droughts, like the irrigation centers. But initially, droughts can be really damaging if you don't prepare for them properly. Okay, so now I have the scrapyard. Let's go ahead and go to the resources and get recyclers. So the recyclers will convert the scrap from the scrapyard into usable material. And that's not where I want to build it. And I'm going to set up 2 initially. And there is a reason why I have the roads laid out the way they are. It's to accommodate power lines later on. Because power lines are required. So you'll see that there's a gap between my houses here. And that's so that I can add power lines later on to electrify the houses. And then also flower beds and other decorations to make them look nice. In fact, I could put some flower beds in now. Because I've got the wood. These beaver people are looking awfully like people. Yeah, it's not Timberborn. Not that I know of. Aesthetics do matter? Yeah, they do to keep people happy. But in terms of like town layout, you gotta lay it out efficiently first and foremost. Oh, look at that confidence boost. Nice. I might upgrade to a mounted bus now. And that will act as a meeting place for colonists to sort of relax and gain confidence. Right now, the bottleneck is scrap, however. So I need these scrappers out here, and maybe I'll employ one more scrapper. The scrappers out here to collect more scrap so that I can build the mounted bus. Nothing like a posture check reminder. It's a good call. And I did just have another child age up, and if we take a look here, I don't have a lot of children becoming adults anytime soon. That is a new wave of people that were born from the start. So I started with 10 adults, 15 children, and every single one of those children are now adults. And then some of them are having kids, or had kids, and we're waiting for them to age up. Another really good thing to build really early on is a school. So schools will allow you to train your children so that they become more productive in adulthood. So I'm also going to lay out a school, and I'm actually going to say build the school next. Build this school before building the mounted bus wreck, and build the school before building the recyclers. I'd like to educate them. So the way the education works, and this will be a little more obvious once I have a school, but the way the education works is initially, when you don't have technology for advanced education, you can pick what you want them to be better at. So you can have them treat tools more carefully, treat clothing more carefully, or be more productive as adults, which I'm going to choose, or badges. And badges are something that plays a role during expeditions where children become specialists. Specialists like they're really particularly good at exploration or scrap harvesting or something like that. I'm going to have 4 scrap workers. And that noise right there, if you caught it, the sort of like dry howling wind, that is indicator that a drought is on the horizon. So it's telling me to stockpile food and water, or water and food, in order to survive, and the soil will become infertile, which means that my cabbage fields will need to be harvested prior. The orchards will survive it, though. They're trees, they just won't yield fruit. Come on, scrappers. Scrap quickly. So one thing I could do is to move more people into water hauling one season before the drought hits in order to maximize the amount of water that I have in my cisterns so that I can survive the drought incoming. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to move these scrap people to just grab scrap that is immediately adjacent to the scrapyard, just so that I can Oh, this school almost has all those. Yeah, it already has all the scrap supplied. Perfect. So I'm moving one of my fishermen in to become a teacher in the school, and here are the 4 choices that I was explaining before. Productivity, handling tools, handling clothing, or badges. The better settlers are trained to achieve badges. The more often they'll be awarded them for accomplishments in the course of their lives. And I'll explain that in a little bit further detail when I get to expeditions. But that requires me to unlock some stuff. So the next thing I want to build is my bus rack. Even before building the recyclers, I think. Just for the confidence boost so that I have that boost carrying me through the drought. And then after that, I ought to probably set up a forester's lodge so that I can start to replace the forest that I'm cutting down. So I'll probably end up putting a forester's lodge maybe here and have the forester work in this area, and then have the gatherer work in this area so they're not competing for the same trees, which is probably good. Now let's look at those children. So they're about half aged up, and 6 of them are in classes. So of the 6 children that I have, every single one is currently being educated in productivity. Yeah, this game is a lot like Banished Fallout theme. Absolutely. That would be a good way to phrase it. Can you tell me something weird? Sure. If you'd like. There we go, 7 in class. You loved Banished, you played for hours? Yeah, this is like a post-apocalyptic Banished. So if you loved Banished, you'll probably feel at home here, I think. I like how we have brand new born children, and they're immediately enrolled in class. They're like 1 day old. You use my videos to fall asleep? You know what? I hear that all the time, so I don't think that's weird. I don't think that's weird at all. Gotta start them young. I guess so. I mean, it is the post-apocalypse. There is definitely no child labor laws, that's for sure. Gotta crack that whip very early on. All right, pretty soon here, I have only one more spot for a young adult to live in. All my other homes are pretty full. I'm going to need a cemetery and more homes, or a shelter. So that's probably on the to-do list. Right now, let me update my goal again. No, I'm still securing resources. Should I get the other jetty before the drought? I'm pretty close to my water max. My water max being 2K. I'm at 1754, so probably not. But if you do look, right now I have no spare radiation protection. In the last 5 seasons, I've used all the clothing, so that's probably the next big hurdle to meet. And I'll update the goal accordingly. Secure resources for tools and clothing. So now, on the top right, as part of my overlay, you can see why I'm collecting resources. And here is the mounted bus, which has given me a little bit of a boon of confidence. And as you can see, the mounted bus has a campfire, which supplies morale for people, or confidence. All right, next step is clothing and tools. So the recyclers are going to be the high priority. And down here in the overlay, you can see settlers with no protective clothing. So protective clothing would be like neck scarves, masks, or full body radiation suits. And there's actually a bit of an odd advantage. And this is a part of the game mechanic that confuses me a little bit. Or like, it doesn't confuse me, but I think it's weird, I should say. but a bit of the game mechanic that is pretty different than other games, which is when you have shortages, you're given missions to be able to fulfill the shortages. And then if you fulfill it, you gain like bonuses out of nowhere. And I'll be given a mission to fulfill clothing pretty soon. And I'll show you what I mean by that in just a minute here. So the thing I'm going to do with this recyclers, they need someone working there. So we'll put a refiner working there. And then B, you need to tell them what to harvest from scrap. So scrap is just a generalized scrap. Sometimes you use that generalized scrap for building things. But then you could also refine it down using the scrap to make cloth or metal or plastic or electronics. So I'm going to have them make cloth because I'm going to need a tailor pretty soon. So over here, I am going to set up a tailor shop in this spot. Let me build the dirt roads to the backside. And then the road for the tailor shop. And the tailor shop needs 12 cloth to be able to be constructed. So I'm going to prioritize the other recycler next to also turn scrap into cloth. And then another thing that I haven't done yet is the Forester's Lodge. Because I haven't needed it just yet, but here we go. I'm getting the mission to be able to address the lack of clothing. So I will read this in just a second. Okay, there we go. So I rode out to the Forester's Lodge, and then the Forester's Lodge, cutting the trees and replanting them in this area so it's not in direct competition with the Gatherer's Cabin. As you can see, they're two different radii. So, we don't have enough protective clothing. Santiago says, many of our settlers are forced to move across this wasteland unprotected. We should boost our production of protected clothing. Let's do it. So up here, it's giving me a mission to build a tailor shop and then to make 2 activated carbon masks. And then to do this, the reward is I get 6 masks. So, yes, like I said, it's a little strange that you just get rewarded 6 masks out of nowhere. But, like, I don't know, it's kind of nice. It's a nice mechanic. Nice little reward, I suppose. So, yeah, let's work towards that. I'll update the goal yet again. Make protective clothing. And then, likewise, when I run out of tools, and right now I have 10 tools, as you can see up top, when I run out of tools, I'll be given a very identical mission to make tools for people. And pretty soon, a lot of these children that have been schooled for productivity will be entering my workforce, which is a really good thing, because then I'll have a lot of productive workers, which is a powerful tool for a successful society. And I am about 1.5 seasons out from the drought. Dr. Troublemaker, thank you for the resub. And cheers. So here's the other recycler. Just got built. I am going to move a scrap collector into the refining roll to gain cloth. And the next thing I want to build is the Forester's Lodge. Because I have the materials to build the Forester's Lodge, I don't yet have the materials to build the tailor shop. Thank you for tuning in to Endzone, A World Apart, which originally streamed live on Twitch May 24th. If this game interests you and you'd like to purchase it, I do have an affiliate link in the description of this video. If you have any feedback or questions for me, let me know in the comments below. And if you'd like to chat with me in real time about this or any of my other content, Rhadamant.com or the description of this video have a link to Discord. If you'd like to catch live streams of mine, Rhadamant.com also has my stream schedule and countdown timers to upcoming streams, as does Discord in the events. Thank you so very much for watching. I hope to catch you in next episode or an upcoming stream. Farewell.